Bienvenidos una vez más a su canal favorito de Real Estate. Esto es Mundo Real Estate. Mi nombre es Andy Bernardo.
Yo soy Karina Quinto.
Y en el día de hoy tenemos un episodio muy bueno, Karina. Tenemos un invitado fenomenal.
Les va a encantar.
¿A quién tenemos?
Tenemos al abogado que trabaja en nuestra oficina para que así directamente podamos preguntarle cosas que ustedes nos preguntan todos los días.
Claro que sí, ya que los abogados es muy esencial al comprar o vender la casa.
Es muy bueno para saber cómo manejarse en el ámbito legal, porque ellos nos representan.
Exactamente. ¿Estamos listos?
Dale.
Productor, ponle esa intro. Ok, Karina, entonces vamos a comenzar hoy día con nuestro abogado que tenemos aquí en la oficina.
Uh-huh.
Pues vamos a hacer unas preguntas importantes.
Okay.
Y vamos a ver cómo nos va. Bueno, pero muy importante, vamos a hacer en inglés,
uh-huh,
ya que pues él no habla español, pero sí tiene asistentes que pueden ayudar a la gente hispana.
Lo que pasa es que ahora hemos tratado nosotros de llegar a la fuente en sí, por eso estamos hablando con él directamente, porque él es el abogado y él nos va a explicar. Si ustedes no hablan inglés o prefieren español, él tiene gente en su oficina que habla español.
Y además, tampoco no se preocupen porque si nosotros somos que lo estamos ayudando o cualquier agente de habla hispana, también está involucrado en el proceso. Así que por todos lados van a estar apoyados. Claro que sí. Bueno, entonces cambiamos al inglés. So let's start introducing our in-house lawyer. Drum roll. Let's welcome to our show, Mr. Joe Foley.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Of course, Joe. So, Joe, the reason why we have you today is because we wanted to ask you some questions.
Sure.
In regards to the process of buying and selling a home.
Sure.
Okay. Karina, let's start with sellers.
Yeah, sure. We can start with sellers. Sure.
I actually have a couple list of questions here.
Yeah,
just in case.
these are the questions that actually we get asked most of the time from our sellers.
Yeah.
And we want to hear it from, someone that actually went to law school. He's an attorney. He has dealt with this a lot. So we want to hear it from him directly.
Yep. But before we even start there, Karina, let's dig a little bit in what's the role of the attorney in this process.
Okay.
Yo, can you tell us a little bit of what you do? Like, what's your role here?
Sure, yeah. Well, I guess to start, my name's Joe Foley. I'm an associate attorney with Barley & Associates.
Mm-hmm.
We have our main office in Clifton, and I have my satellite office here in Paramus. And we do deal with quite a bit of real estate on a daily basis. So, the lawyer's purpose in this transaction is to make sure that the buyer or the seller, either side, is first and foremost happy at the end of the day when the transaction is done, that they are happy with what was done during the deal, and also to make sure that we provide as much protection to the clients as physically possible. Everything that we can do to make sure that we save them time, money, potential lawsuits, anything like that. That's what we try to do, because at the end of the day, we don't want them expending too much time or money or effort when we can try to save them on that and to make sure that they're as fully protected as we can.
Nice. I think that's super important in these transactions nowadays.
It's great to know that, because a lot of my sellers, they ask me when they're like, okay, I want to sell my house. What's the next step? And I said, I need to get your attorney's info. We work with great attorneys, but I need you to, if you have someone that you trust. And they very often say, what? Why do we need an attorney?
Right.
For what? Yeah. So that's great that you actually...
Or they'll say, yes, I have an attorney, but they're a personal injury attorney or they're a criminal attorney. And if you don't deal with this on a day-to-day basis, you don't see the writings, you don't see the specific documents that we deal with. Yes, they're attorneys. They could probably handle it, but they're not going to be available. They're not going to have the same knowledge that a real estate attorney would have.
So let me piggyback on that comment that you just said. So there is a difference then between real estate attorneys and the traditional attorneys.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Maybe it might not necessarily be in the knowledge aspect. A lot of the times it is, because it's a very specific area of the law.
Okay.
And unless you do it, you're not going to know how the processes go. You might have the knowledge up here about real estate and property law, but you're not going to know how to apply that to the specific things that we have here. And the other thing that I mentioned is the big difference is kind of time. A lawyer who is in court all the time isn't going to have time to give you a call back. They're not going to have time to email you. You're going to deal with their assistant. Their assistant's going to work the whole deal for you.
Before you go to your question, Karina, I just want to ask a question. What if can an attorney do regular, everyday, practice whatever law, like violations?
Yeah, general practice.
Yeah, and also do real estate.
They can, yes, absolutely. You can have that as an area. You can do everything. Okay. But you need to make sure you know what you're doing before you can, tell somebody, yeah, I do real estate law. I'm a real estate lawyer. You have to have, specific knowledge about the inner workings of the deals, how New Jersey handles them specifically, real estate agents, clients, everything.
Karina, you had a question?
I was going to say, so that's the main takeaway right now.
Okay.
Because a lot of our clients always say, oh, I have a lawyer, I have an attorney, but they don't even know what do they specialize in, right?
Or so maybe they do, but then they don't have the time, like Joe said. They don't have the time to actually go and deal with a real estate transaction.
You can use them. They might do a great job. They might do a wonderful job. I mean, they're attorneys for a reason. They could be incredible. But you are taking the risk.
And what I was going to say is that from what I hear, it works the same thing as realtors. We actually learn from the transactions. Everybody can have a real estate license.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean that if they come across this particular situation, they would know how to handle it because they've never experienced it before.
Right. Or maybe have the service, right? Because I think it comes down to service too at the end of the day, right?
Yes. That's why one of the first things I mentioned when we started this was, first and foremost, your client's happiness.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing, because even if the transaction goes well according to you and me, if the client's not happy, they're not going to come back to us. They're not going to recommend us.
Right.
And, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We should care about what the clients care about.
Right.
And I try to the best of my abilities. I like to make sure that my clients are on the same page, they're happy, and I like to let them know that I care, because I do.
Okay, good. That's actually amazing. Now, before we go into
that's very important.
The buyers and the sellers, another question that I know with my clients: how should the communication be between an attorney and the client?
First, it should be an open communication. There should not be major delays between the time you try as the client to reach out to your attorney and from the time it takes your attorney to get back to you. Sometimes it will take a day to receive a response. That doesn't mean you're being ignored. That doesn't mean that you are less important to us. It just means that there are things going on at the pressing moment that have to be taken care of, because they just have to be. It's our job to make sure that all of our clients are taken care of. But with a real estate attorney, somebody who typically only does this area of the law, you tend to have an easier time getting a hold of your attorney. The communication is easier.
The reason why I was asking is because I remember Karina, one of her clients, he was telling us that his attorney wasn't really picking up the call. He wasn't answering. So, and in that situation, we had to, step in and try to get the attorney to go. But this was the client's attorney that they chose. So this is why it's important to make sure we choose, or we work with an attorney that does
with someone that is available.
Yeah, so always trust your agents, if they recommend someone, because they already work with someone. They already know how that person works and how the communication should be.
Sure. And there are certain events you're never going to be able to sway anybody. And of course, you don't want to in certain scenarios. People have family attorneys they've been using for years.
Yeah.
And you can, mention it till you're blue in the face. Hey, you should really get a real estate lawyer. Don't use your family lawyer. They're still going to go with them. And that's fine. As long as they realize, they have to deal with some potential delays or maybe some miscommunication or something like that, or it can all go really well.
At the end of the day, you live and learn.
Exactly.
It is what it is. Okay.
That's why we have this channel.
Yeah, exactly.
To help people keep an open mind.
Okay, all right. So let's get into some of the questions that we were asked to ask our attorney. So let's start with sellers or buyers. What you want to do, Karina? Pick one.
Buyers.
Buyers. All right. So I'm gonna ask one, you ask the other, and then and then we go from there. So Joe, one of the questions that one of our subscribers asked was, what is the attorney review process when buying a home, and how it can affect my purchase?
The attorney review process, buyer or seller, is the same.
Okay.
It is a period of time in which the attorneys will go back and forth with items that we call, well, documents that we call riders. The purpose of the rider is to amend or change, remove, or add certain aspects to the form contract of sale that all the realtors in the state do use. Okay. Some of them have, terms that are unfavorable and things like that. So we kind of go through the contract, we strike through things, and we make sure that our rider is inclusive of everything the client wants. So specifically for the buyer, we want to make sure that we include language that protects them to the best of our ability. We want to make sure that we include anything that they have specifically requested that was maybe left out of the contract. Okay. And that rider gets produced, put together, sent over to the other side. If you're on the buyer side, goes to the seller. Typically the buyers do theirs first. Right. Sends over to the seller sends theirs back. Or they'll sign yours, they'll mark up the buyer's rider in handwriting, they'll redline it on the computer. Like the little correction. Right? Sometimes they send an entire rider back with their comments, questions, concerns, so on and so forth. And that's kind of the gist of it. But what a lot of people really get incorrect about attorney review is the 3-day period. Okay, I was going to ask. So if you ask just a regular everyday person that's purchasing a home, hey, what's your opinion? What do you think the 3-day time limit for attorney review means? They're going to, we have 3 days to get out of attorney review. Simply not true. Okay. You have 3 days to formally disapprove of the contract, and that can be done, what it typically is done via rider. But in certain circumstances where you're waiting for information, right, and you can't put the rider together and you don't want to pass that 3-day period. What happens? Once you do pass that 3-day period, the contract of sale that you have put together as the agent takes effect as is, and you don't want that. Of course. Okay. You do not want that.
You have 3 days to negotiate.
Yes.
Okay, I understand.
And then the contract will take effect. So once the riders are signed by both the parties, executed Foley, that will end attorney review, and then you can start tolling your time for, deposits and inspection issues.
So that's the beginning part of the full transaction.
Yes, it is essentially that's the first step that we do as the attorneys. Okay. You send us the contract. We get through the contract, we call our client, we talk to them about the contract, we make sure it's right. The purchase price is correct, their name is spelled correctly, anything we can go through. And it happens a lot. Right? Yeah, it happens a lot.
Especially with Hispanic people, because we have like 4 or 5 names.
Yep, and you need to make sure that that's accurate, because it's going on property record. And if the property record's incorrect, you can run into some really big issues.
So, I had a question with attorney review. So, is it important to your knowledge or to your point of view that we as agents write that contract as specific and as accurate as possible?
Yeah.
So we don't wait those 3 days.
Yes. I mean, typically you're not waiting the 3 days anyway if you're using a good attorney.
I know if we're using you, definitely.
Yeah.
One day out.
Karina, if you used me before, I get the contract, the rider is out within an hour or 2.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I don't wait. I don't like it. I am super focused on this stuff. It hits my desk. I have to get it done.
Now let me just make a quick remark there, Karina, because it has happened to you. It has happened to me that we have, unfortunately, not good for other people, but during attorney review, we can still win a house. We can still submit an offer.
You mean if somebody else is under attorney review?
Yeah, if somebody else is under attorney review, and we as agents, our clients like the house, and they haven't gotten out of attorney review, we can still put an offer.
Snatch it.
And get that house for our clients. That's why it's important for the attorney.
That's why with him, it's really convenient, because once he gets to his hands, he's gonna grab it and run with it. You're not gonna have to continuously call your attorney. Are you ready? Is it ready? Let's do it. No, he's gonna be ahead of you.
The problem becomes waiting on if we're on the buyer side, the problem becomes waiting for the seller. And like you just said, you can continue to field offers for properties during attorney review, because you can cancel a contract during attorney review for any reason. Any reason within the law, of course. It can't be discriminatory or anything like that, but you can just say, I no longer want to purchase this property. Right. I'm done. I'm backing out. We cancel the deal. Nice. And while you're waiting for a seller to return their rider, this is why I say I don't like to let things go through the weekend. Because they'll show the property over the weekend, and they will field an offer, and they will get a better and higher offer. And then you will get an email Monday morning saying, we're canceling the deal.
But then, Joe, if that happens, let's say that happens, and I'm sure you have done it too. Like,
it happens.
Attorneys that you work over the weekend as well, right?
Sometimes we have to.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to.
Yeah.
If something pressing is going on, we have to.
Yes. What it is. It's a job.
Yeah, it's the job. But if we get an email on Saturday and it's something like it has to get taken care of today, unless I'm physically unavailable,
of course,
because on the weekends you might physically be somewhere else.
Of course.
If I'm physically available and oh my God, I have to get this done, it's going to get done that day.
That's good.
All right. Yeah.
All right, good. So that was very informational.
I want to make sure they understand as
well.
Yeah,
of course.
So what it means to get somebody else. Okay, so what does that mean? What you just said, when somebody is in attorney review, if another buyer comes and can take the house away from them. Let's say we put ourselves in the seller's shoes, right?
Yeah.
So we accepted an offer for $400,000, and then somebody else comes while you are in the process of attorney review with this buyer number one. Buyer number two comes and they offer $50,000 more. As a seller, you have to, you think about it, you said $50,000 more. I mean, what are you going to do? It's not really, I'm saying this because a lot of my clients, when this happens, they get so angry and they say, wow, I can't believe these people did this to me. But we have to put ourselves in the seller's shoes as well, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean,
what would you do? Would you take $50,000 more?
Yeah, I mean, it happened to me on the other side. I had a client that we liked the house, and it happened exactly like he said it. They went into attorney review with another buyer on the weekend on Friday.
But in this case, he was the one that snatched
So
it.
I was on the buyer side. So they went on attorney review on Friday. For some reason, that attorney did not work weekends, and they were waiting for Wednesday or either Tuesday or Wednesday to get out of attorney review, according to what the agent told me. So we went in. My client liked it. We put an offer higher than, we hope that it was higher. And on the weekend, we got it on the contract. Like, they accepted our offer. Well, they accepted our offer, not on the contract. They accepted our offer. So we went to the attorney, and they did it quickly, and we got a attorney review within the same day.
Yeah.
And now it's ours, and my client bought the house. So,
That's great.
Attorneys, you have to get the right one. It's plain and simple. You have to get the right one and get it going. Otherwise, it's anybody's ball game at that point.
Absolutely.
Right?
Okay.
We good with that? All right.
Yeah.
So, second question, so I'll do buyers, Karina, you do sellers. That way, we can get this going. So this is pretty simple. Can you explain the steps when on the closing of a home? Like what's the steps there?
The day of closing or the full transaction?
Give me a quick summary of the full transaction, because then we'll get to the day of closing.
We already started.
Okay.
We already talked
With
about
attorney
attorney review.
review.
That is quite literally the first step after receiving said contract.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Attorney review starts. Then we go through, after attorney review, we've set up all the dates and times for performance, mortgage, closing date, deposits, inspections, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
We track all of those dates.
Okay.
You as the agents, us as the attorney, and our clients. We track all those time frames. We make sure whatever side we're on that we hit them. Buyer side, we have to make sure that we've given the deposit in time, that we've done our inspections in time, we've handed in our requests, if any, so on and so forth. We go through all of that, and we have to make sure that any repairs that we've requested have been completed prior to closing. We have to make sure that the seller has obtained their certificate of occupancy so we can move into the property, or whatever that town may require. Every town is a little bit different. I'm sure you've seen it.
Yeah.
Some it's the CO, some it's a smoke cert, some it's a fire cert, some it's a combination of all three. It really all depends on the town.
Okay.
And what they come out, they inspect, they make sure the property is good to live in. The seller is responsible typically for providing that to the buyer prior to closing. So we have to make sure all of that stuff gets done. Make sure the mortgage commitment's in so that our buyer can actually pay for the property. Make sure all of those conditions are cleared.
Okay.
Once we get through that, day-to-day stuff, making sure all the little things are done, we start approaching closer to closing. We have to make sure that we have the funds to pay.
Okay.
We have to make sure that all of the money in the transaction is accounted for appropriately on the Alta statement, the seller's closing or the seller's or the buyer's closing disclosure, whichever side you're on, and that tracks all of the money on the sheet through, you know, what your commission is, what my fee is, what the house price was, how much money is being paid in taxes, what are you getting back in taxes if you're on the seller's side, things like that. What is being prorated for the taxes if you have to pay for the last 3 days of the month that you're purchasing a house, things like that. That all has to be done and approved. The attorney will look at it, but I always have my clients look at it because it's their money.
Right.
They're the ones that know, you know, what their mortgage fees look like. We're not as the attorneys up on what your mortgage fees are going to look like or anything like that. We know the basic structure, we know the term, we know the amount of money you're going to pay, but the client really has to pay attention. So one thing we always tell our clients, please read everything. Okay. If you don't understand it, that's fine. You can ask, but please read it because they have to know.
Notice how he said all of these little things and he named them so quickly. But as you're saying them, I'm thinking, clients.
You know, I was about to say the same thing. I was picturing my question already.
They are on daily basis, like, you know, checking. They know what to look for. Check. And clients are like, oh, but just clueless. I'm just shocked.
So let me piggyback on that. So my question that I was going to ask in relation to what she just said, Joe.
Yeah.
I was going to say, okay, you just said a whole bunch of things, right? And those legal stuff. Obviously, as agents, we kind of know already the process.
Yeah, you guys know the basic outline of everything.
But let's just pretend for a minute that I'm a first-time home buyer and I have no clue what's going on. Obviously, my agent is going to tell me what's going on.
Yeah, they'll brief you at least on it.
Right. So then in that case, once you're working with a client, does the client have to worry about any of these things, or you?
Well, yes. The client always has to worry. It is their money. It's not my money.
No, but what I'm trying to ask is, like, are they going to have to get knowledge of every single thing, or you're the one that's going to be in their hands?
They will be. They will be advised on everything, not only by me, but when I work with agents, my agents advise them too, and I tell them, hey, if you're on the seller side, please make sure you work with them to get the seal for the property.
Right.
Help them with it. You don't have to pay for it. The client will pay for it. Of course. But, you know, help them. I always tell my agents, help them through the process. We do everything we can to help them as well. I will send my clients an attorney review intro. You've seen them, Karina. Yes. And what it does is it lists the most important dates: mortgage, closing, inspection, deposit. The most important dates, typically those 4 things. Sometimes, depending on the deal, it will include another item. And it will give the end date right there. This is the last day you have to finish this. If your deposit isn't in by this date, you've breached the contract. Not typically the end of the world. You get emails all the time, hey, your client's deposit is due today. We can't control them. We can't control what our client goes to the bank. We can tell them, but we can't do it for them.
Absolutely. So, I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm sorry. I'm just so excited.
I can see it.
So basically, no, what I want to say is, it's not that he's going to do all the work for the client.
We can't.
Correct. And it's not that the client is going to do everything by themselves. No. What I'm taking away from this is that he, with all his experience, is going to already have a list. He already knows what to look for, and he is going to work with you guys. If you guys don't or didn't read something, you know where to ask, who to ask. You know where, hey Joe, what does this mean? He's going to be right there.
So that's what I was trying to get at.
Right. So that's, to answer your question.
Yeah, so pretty much a lot of buyers, they don't know, right? And that's why it's important that they work with a good real estate agent, a great real estate agent that knows, and a great attorney. And as a team, we walk the client from the beginning to the end, which is where we want to get to the closing table.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah, so I mean, that's that. And then you get to the closing table, I guess, to kind of polish off what we had started on. You get to the closing table. Typically, attorneys don't lead a closing anymore in New Jersey. Title companies do. They have specific trained title closers that have all the knowledge of all of the documents that you're going to be signing, all of the mortgage documents. That's another thing, is the meat of the closing is document signing. You are signing documents you've already signed before. You are signing new documents, mortgage documents, title documents, insurance documents, all of these things. The title closer walks the buyer through everything. They have a package that's typically about this thick. You've seen them all. They're thick packages, and you go through them. They flip the page of the person. Okay, this is this specific document for your mortgage. This is an IRS document that allows the IRS to look into you for this purchase, so on and so forth. All of those things. It's a big packet. You go through, you sign everything. Typically, things have been changing a little bit, so I don't want to give too much info on this, but typically we bring a certified check to closing for the remainder of your balance.
They still do, if there is one.
I just had a deal where they said we no longer accept any checks. We only take wire fees, and it delayed everything by like 4 hours because the wire didn't clear.
But I think that will depend on the title, because
it depends on the title company. They all have specific requirements that they have to follow.
So nothing is black and white.
Nothing is black and white. Nothing.
That's what we
anything
have
that
legal representation.
Yeah, anything that you hear from one company could be completely untrue with another company. You know, unless it's prescribed by the law, it's kind of a gray area.
All right. Okay, so that was great. That was great. Buyer consultation with an attorney. Obviously, there's a lot more information out there. Any more questions that you guys may have, put them on the comments below, or you can always call Joe. We're gonna have this information also on the description. So, Karina, let's go with the next set of questions.
Okay, so now we're gonna ask questions about sellers. These are the most popular questions that we get.
Yep.
One of them is, what happens if during the inspection time, we actually find a major issue in the house that we were not aware of? Like, we went to the house, we liked it, we put an offer, the offer got accepted, and then we brought the inspector to check on the house, and there's something huge, like let's say a
structural.
Yeah, something major, something that could be unsafe or anything of the nature. It all depends. It depends on the language that you've used in your rider for the inspection.
Okay.
You know, in New Jersey, technically every house is sold as is.
Yes.
But that's why it's very important for your rider to have specific inspection language.
Well, let's pretend, because mostly right now, what we're seeing as agents is that everybody uses the same language when it comes to inspection contingency.
Typically
limited to a structural, environmental, and
a lot of people are doing that now. I tell my buyers you should get a full inspection. It's up to them.
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, due to the fact that we're in a seller's market, you know, we have to find a way to.
It's a little challenging.
I would not be doing my job if I didn't tell my buyers to go for a full inspection, because you are limiting the amount of money that you can get off on the property. You are limiting the broken items that you can have fixed. So as a seller, you know, if the buyer comes in and does their inspection, that's what you're asking, right? From the seller side. The buyer comes in and does their inspection. We're representing the seller. It all comes down to the inspection language. So let's say you put in the contract for, as the seller's agent, that you were going to limit it to structural, environmental, maybe add tank sweeps potentially. You know, just I like to be specific about certain things. Or, you know, maybe you added electrical because it could be a safety concern. Then if it is one of those categories that is wrong with the property, depending on the language, my inspection language allows the buyer and the seller to negotiate anything that is agreed upon. So if it's structural, environmental, physical, anything within that, we can negotiate upon whether it'll be fixed, whether we'll offer a credit to the buyer for that. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what the buyer is going to request. So if the buyer says, I'm not taking a credit, I want you to fix it, and you say, we'll only offer a credit, if the rider language, whatever the attorney wrote in that, allows for it, you would be able to cancel. My language, if we cannot agree on a resolution, we can cancel the deal, get our deposit back. It's the most important thing.
So if a client is working with you, if a buyer, I know I'm always asking you from the seller perspective, but let's say you have the buyer and then you write the rider, and then this happens, the buyer can walk out of the transaction without any...
If I have written that rider, yes. The buyer will be out. Same thing for the seller. If we find that there's a massive structural problem and it's going to cost $100,000 to fix, and now the seller's like, well, maybe I'll just keep the house. I don't want to sell it. I don't want to deal with it. So they can cancel too. They can also
get out without any...
They could say, we don't want to fix it. we're not going to, and we're not going to offer a credit, and then the buyer's probably just going to walk out.
So let me ask you something, Joe. From the seller side, you represent the seller, right? And let's just say the buyer's attorney didn't have that language in the rider originally.
It would be whatever's in the contract or whatever I've put in my seller's rider for the inspection language. It would be one of the two. And you would just go, you would be guided based upon whichever one you have, whichever one has the writing in it, whichever one, and you know, riders are done on a last in time type of rule. So if my rider comes after yours, even though I include language in mine that says mine will supersede anything in yours that is conflicting, you know, it's done that way. So typically the seller's rider is the last in time. So whatever the language in there, unless altered again, will be controlling if it conflicts with the buyers.
Then again, what I'm hearing is the importance of having the right legal representation.
Of course, it all comes down to that, because you have a lot of money, you know, that you're investing. You know, you don't want to lose it.
Potentially the biggest purchase you'll ever make.
Or if you're selling, you know,
you
how much money you want to receive.
Absolutely.
So
the biggest business.
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
You're making your life, probably.
Yeah, definitely a lot of money.
Okay, the last question I'm going to ask is from a seller's perspective, right? What legal actions can I take if a buyer fails to close on time? So if you were supposed to close the 15th of the month, and then it's the 14th, and we still don't have a clear to close, we don't think we're going to close the day, you know, the next day, what happens then?
You have to wait until the actual date. Nothing can be done the day prior. Has to be done as of the closing date. So the closing date has to have come and gone. And in New Jersey, the only remedy you have, because all closing dates are estimates, the only remedy you have is to issue what we call time of the essence. That is a letter that we would send to the other side. It doesn't matter what side you're on. Buyer or seller meets the same exact thing. It provides them with 14 days, 10 business days. It's the same exact thing to close title on the property. So if we're the seller, we would be sending that to the buyer saying seller was ready and able to close title on the 15th. That day essentially has come and gone, and we didn't close title. Now you have until X date, so you know, the 30th or the 29th or something like that. You have to give them that 14 days.
14 days.
14, 10 business. It's the same thing. You'll see people use different ones. People will use 10, people will use 14, but you know, they'll say 10 business, they'll say 14.
That includes the weekend, right?
People will also, people will also argue with you about what it means. Certain lawyers will say, I don't think it means that. It's another weird area.
Yeah, because 5 days, Monday to Friday, Saturday and Sunday, that's 7.
But you will get argument from plenty of attorneys saying, I disagree. I don't think time of the essence means that prescribed time. Oh well, you still send them the letter. And that gives them enough, 2 weeks essentially to prepare, have everything ready. And then if they don't by then close, after the 2 week period, after that 10 business day period, whatever the prescribed time was written, then they're in breach of contract if they haven't closed still. And the remedies for something in terms of breach of contract is to take them to court. You'd have to sue them for specific performance, which means, to force the transaction through. You would take them to court and the judge would order them to purchase the property if you won. It doesn't happen that often.
But then my question there, Joe, is this. Who owns that lawsuit? Like, let's say my clients, you're the seller side, I'm selling my house, you're representing me. The other side, the buyer side, they don't purchase. Time of the essence comes, time of the essence goes.
Yeah, the buyer breached.
Right, now I want to sue.
Yeah.
So now do I have to go into a different process with you? Like, how does that work?
Well, I'm not a litigator. I don't take people to court. It's not what I do. I'm a real estate attorney. But our firm does. Our partner, Mr. Barley, does do litigation. It's definitely in our wheelhouse there. So if that does happen, it doesn't happen that often. Because
I haven't seen it.
If that does happen, you call us, we set you up, we figure everything out. Right. It is not covered under the same fee that you have paid us for the transaction. It is a new transaction. And something that would be billed hourly.
So I think one question a lot of people would ask with what you just said is it worth it? Is it worth pursuing that?
Typically not, unless you really want to get rid of the property, because you're going to be enriched by the amount of money you're making. But it depends on the attorney you go to. You have to spend quite a large amount of money to take somebody to court.
Right.
And you're paying your attorney good money.
But then again, if there's a deposit there as a seller,
well, you would also be keeping that deposit if they breached. So that's another thing is if they breach an unlawful breach, you can keep their deposit unless prescribed by the contract or writing of our writers. If you breach, you don't get your deposit back. Typically, you only get your deposit back for permissible cancellation. So that's another thing is you lose your deposit. You could sue for specific performance, and lost, any money that you might have expended during the transaction. You could also add on to that too.
Yeah.
But it's always up to the client to decide, right? If it's
always.
worth it or not.
Always. We never tell the client sue someone. We never tell the client don't sue someone. We tell them speak to a litigator, go through your options, and then you make the decision on if it's going to be worth your time, effort, your money.
Yeah, because I think it'll come down to that. Like, is it really worth going through the process or just relisting it and get another buyer?
Right. And sometimes that
especially in this seller market.
Sometimes that's
if it was the
the
other way around, probably it would be worth it.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, it's up to the client.
And it's a headache for them as well, because they've gone through the headache of trying to get through the purchase or the sale or whatever they're doing, and now you have to drag them on for what could take years.
Oh, can it take years?
Oh, lawsuits could take 6 months. They could take a year. It could take 2 years. It all depends. It really all depends. I can't tell you how long it would take.
And then if you actually go through the process, can you still sell your house? Or you cannot sell it?
Well, if you're suing somebody to purchase your house, you can't sell it.
Okay, so then
you're stuck. You're stuck with
obviously.
so now you're stuck with the property still. You're
Right.
paying the property taxes for however long you still own the property. It's something you have to talk to your litigator about maybe recovering that.
But that's the reason why I'm asking, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to be asking themselves, okay, so I'm going to sue this person for whatever, but I do want to sell my house. So obviously, if you're suing them for specific performance, no, you need to have the property to sell them. Right.
So,
wow,
all right,
that's amazing.
This was very informative.
It was super good. Thank you so much, Joe.
Oh, thank you for having me on. It's my pleasure.
Want to have his information down there on the description. So if you have more questions, feel free to give him a call. Give us a call. We'll
help you.
We'll definitely help you. We have a great team in our roster that we can get the process from A to Z until we go to the closing table, Karina.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm excited. I'm still in my head and still thinking of everything he said. Wow.
All right. Well, this is the end for us. Another great episode, I think, Karina. Thank you again, Joe.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Here.
Thank you, Joe.
My pleasure, Karina.
Thank you guys for watching. I'm Andy Bernardo.
I'm Karina Quinto.
With Joe Foley. See you on the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.
Awesome.